Hello everyone, my name is Jonathan, and today I'm going to do something a little bit different. It's not something I've ever done before, and I may or may not ever do it again. It's something that, I don't know, I've kind of been meaning to do things like this at some point or other, and I figured what best to do it when someone who I actually, like to watch and respect at least a little bit, and I would say quite a bit as a human being. And so that way, nothing I say could be taken maliciously at all because it's someone I like. So if I disagree with someone I like, it's probably going to be taken better by most people watching than if I said, "All right, now let me debunk this scumbag." In this case, it's just me saying, "Hey, I like you, but here's where I disagree with you." And in this case, it is Markiplier. And Markiplier put up a video a few days ago about his thoughts on gun control. And he said a few things that were kind of incorrect. And so I just like to correct them. Now, obviously, he is completely and totally entitled to his opinion. And so if he wants, to say, "Hey, I have this opinion," there's nothing wrong with having his opinion. But there was just a tiny bit of misinformation that he had. So just like to try to correct that if I could.
Hey guys, I wanted to make a video that's a little out of the norm from what I usually do. This is in relation to the Stoneman Douglas shootings, and first and foremost, I have to say that I'm incredibly proud of the way the kids have been handling themselves, how they've been demonstrating all across the country in the organization of marches and talks with people in political sphere.
Well, that what he's talking about is the shooting down in Florida, done by Nicholas Cruz, the 19-year-old individual who was a former student of there, and went in and I know he killed, I believe, 17 people, and I believe most of which were students. I think one gym teacher died, but I assume that most of the people he killed were students. And there's a lot going on with this. Obviously, it's a huge tragedy. It's horrible that it happened. It should not have been done. Cruz, I will be very disappointed if Cruz does not get the death penalty after this. And there is some talk to be had about the incompetence of the... I hope I'm not confusing too. I do know recently there was a shooting, and there was a police officer who should have engaged the shooter, and he did not. And even when other police officers showed up, he did not engage. And he was a coward and did not deserve the title of police officer. And I believe he resigned after that, which is fitting. But there's so much that goes on that is into this. But if we're getting to the point where we say everyone can agree on this, though, that is, it's a horrible situation. It should not have happened, and Nicholas Cruz deserves to die for this. And he said he's proud. Mark said he's proud of the students that are demonstrating and giving their thoughts and going to political matters, or going to people in political positions and trying to get things done. And he says he's proud of those kids. That's a fine thing to be proud of. Like, seeing kids actually getting involved in what's going on. They might be a little misguided in what they believe will solve the problem, but at least there are kids getting involved, and I mean, they might be suggesting things that will not help the issue at all. Like I have heard, there's some kids are saying, more gun control is what's needed. We need to ban certain firearms. We need to do that. Well, obviously that wouldn't solve anything. What would have been better is if we do more things not to prevent people from getting the firearms, because it's been proven time and time again, if if a criminal, if a villain, as it were, wants to get his hands on a firearm or any tool of destruction, they're going to get it. And so to say, no, you can't have it, well, if it's against the law to have it, then only people who follow the law will not have it. So, but that's something I might go into further later, because that gets mentioned again, so I won't try to talk about that right now. But yeah, I agree with him. It is good to see children, and young kids getting involved politically, and obviously, being that young, you won't understand everything, and rather than make things based on logic, your assumptions and ideas will be all based on your emotions. And so maybe not necessarily, that's obviously why kids aren't in power, but it is good to see them wanting to get involved at a young age. So yeah, that's a good reason to be proud of them.
And usually I stay out of anything that has to do with politics or religion or anything of the above. But in this particular case, I felt I needed to say something because some of my fans have been affected by this. And some of my fans are out there demonstrating about this. And I wanted to say something because I don't feel it's right that kids have to be the ones on the front lines of this fight. And I wanted to throw in my support and give my thoughts on the matter for whatever that may be worth.
Actually, it's fine that you did give your opinion on this, and I have said a good many times that, celebrities need to keep their mouth shut. And what I mean by that is not celebrities should not voice their opinions. Everyone should be able to voice their opinions. But it's when people that people use their platform to try to force an idea on other people, or use their platform to put down people, and things like that. So all they're doing is they're not making any valid arguments or just offering their opinion. They're putting people down. They're saying, this, if you don't agree with me, then you're a Nazi, or you're fascist or whatever. And so obviously I am opposed to that. That's just because when someone idolizes somebody and they say, well, someone who doesn't do that is like this, there are a lot of people that are going to get behind them just because of who they are, and I don't feel that's right. But I do believe that everyone has the right to voice their opinion and to stick it out there. And I actually, like to hear other people's opinions myself. And so I'm all for, him offering his opinion on this and telling his thoughts and how he feels. That's fine by me.
But to give you a background, I have an extensive background and experience with guns. My father was a 24-year Army man. He was a member of the NRA. He taught me about guns from a very early age, and he taught me to respect them and how to properly handle guns. I've gone to the shooting range many times. I've shot all kinds of guns. My dad even built muzzleloader rifles as a hobby. So when I say these things, just know that it's not coming from a place of ignorance.
Well, that's actually very refreshing to hear, because 99% of the time, the two people on the sides of the fence, the people who are for gun control, people who are not for gun, or people who are for any form of gun control, and people who are for little to no forms of gun control, it's always this. On the one side, the people who are for gun control, you have these individuals who are they've never tried to buy a gun. They've never fired a gun. They know nothing about guns. They know as little as a person can possibly know about how firearms actually function. And then you have the people who are not for gun control, and those are the people who have actually used firearms before. So seeing someone who has developed an opinion and actually has some knowledge, at least a modicum of knowledge about how the functionality of firearms and how they work and how things go and and all that, then yeah, that's actually good to see. So now I know that, the opinions that you have, there may be a few misconceptions here and there, and not, but it's not coming from a place of total ignorance, like what these arguments generally come from. So it's helpful to know that you have an informed opinion rather than just, yep, this is what it is. Guns are bad. So that's very good.
And first and foremost, I want to say that I don't think people should be able to access assault rifles.
Well, because you have that opinion, you'd actually be glad to know that you can't own an assault rifle. An assault rifle is a fully automatic rifle, and while technically it is possible to obtain one, no one but really the most hardcore collector would want to, really. I mean, like, I would like to own one. That would be really cool to have one. To have a pre-1986 M16. I would love that. A fully automatic rifle that I can keep and use and shoot, and it'd be great. I would have no practical use for it, but it would be fun. But I don't have $15,000. And that's how much they cost. You're looking at the low end of it. And there are other weapons that you can get besides the M16s, but those are the cheap ones. I know someone who has a pre-1986 Browning belt-fed machine gun. And it's wonderful. It's so cool. And I asked him one time if it was for sale, and he said it was. And he only wanted $100,000 for it. That's anecdotal, obviously, but that's a good idea of what these things cost, because they're not cheap. And Nicholas Cruz did not use one. He did not have one. Because he didn't have that kind of money, I'm sure. Most people don't have that kind of money. But he used a semi-automatic rifle, which is not an assault rifle. Now, you could say it's an assault weapon because of the assault weapons ban in 1996, I think. Defined an assault weapon as, there are a few other, but one of them was a magazine capacity of greater than something, 10 or 15 rounds, something like that. So any semi-automatic rifles you had, in order for them to be legal, you could not have a magazine of greater than 10 rounds. Now, that, if you defined assault weapon in the same way that you defined that, by the definition of the assault weapons ban, by the verbiage that was included in that, then yes, you could say he had an assault weapon. But that's not an assault rifle. And if you're going by the definition of assault weapon, then, my little Glock Model 22, chambered in .40 caliber, it's not 22 caliber, it's a Model 22, would be considered an assault weapon because it holds 15 rounds. So here's an assault weapon, and no one's, very few people try to go after these. And which is funny because it's an Austrian weapon designed for police and military. So there you go. The Armalite platform, well, the AR-15 specifically, was not designed for military use at all. That's specifically a civilian weapon, and this is a civilian weapon, but it was originally intended to be a military weapon. And I believe there's plenty of militaries who still use these as their sidearm because it's a great weapon. But yeah, basically what I'm getting at is you believe that no one should be able to own an assault rifle, and as of right now, you can't. And there's another point that I want to get at about those, but I will save that for the end. But let me finish this, and then I will get to that at the very end of everything.
There's no beating around the bush. There's no kidding about it. There's no exaggerations. Assault rifles exist solely to kill people. And you could say the same thing about all guns, but assault rifles especially, they don't have any purpose in hunting. They have a purpose in self-defense only to the point where they can kill multiple people with a lot of bullets in a very large magazine.
There's a load of stuff to get into there. Okay, the first one. Assault rifles. Their only purpose is killing people. Okay. Yeah, sure. I'll agree with you there. An assault rifle, its only purpose is killing people. That's what it's designed to do. Yeah. And it's very good at doing that. So, yeah, it's great. Great at killing people. And for argument's sake, let's define an AR-15 as an assault rifle. Okay, so it's really good at killing people. It's the best there is at killing people. Well, if I have a weapon in my home and someone breaks into my home and they intend harm to me or my wife, or I have reason to believe they intend to harm me or my wife, I don't want that person to be alive. That's just the way it is. And I intend to make them not be alive. If they intend to harm me or my wife, especially my wife, if I have anything to say about it, they won't survive the encounter. Using my Glock again, this is what I keep in my house for personal protection. This weapon is chambered in .40 Smith & Wesson. It's what the police use. It's pretty good at killing people. But Armalite platform rifles are better at killing people. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say you should use that for home defense, and for one reason and one reason only, and that's the reason of overpenetration. You know, if I'm laying in my bed over there, and someone comes in my door, and they're standing there, I say, no, you're in my house and you shouldn't be. I'm going to shoot you, and I shoot him over there. Well, you know, the bullet there's a possibility of the bullet, you know, going through walls and possibly even exiting my house. And I don't want that to happen, but what I'm saying is, though, they are better at killing people. They're very, very effective at killing people. And so, if there's a time when I need to kill someone, if I need to, I would rather have something that's going to do the job. Something that is going to be very effective at what it does. You know, I don't want to keep a .22 caliber short pistol by my bed and use that for self-defense. I don't want to keep a .25 automatic by my bed, because those guns, they're not good at killing people. It can happen. It has happened. But they weren't designed for it. And then you said that they have no purpose in... Oh, you said all guns are designed to kill. And that is true, yeah. You can use them for target shooting. You can use them for all kinds of stuff. But yes, firearms were invented for the sole purpose of taking one thing that is alive and making it no longer alive. Whether it is a person or an animal or whatever. A gerbil? I don't know. Don't shoot gerbils, kids. That's bad. But whatever it is designed to take something that's alive and make it stop being alive. Then you said assault rifles, which, as we said, for argument's sake, we'll call an AR-15 an assault rifle. It has no purpose in hunting. Well, for varmint control, like coyotes and antelope jackrabbits, and a few other things, feral goats in Hawaii, the AR-15 is one of the single most popular rifles for that purpose, because there are a lot of the animals there, and you have, semi-automatic, fire your bullets as they come, which doesn't make any sense, fire your bullets as they come, pull the trigger, fire a bullet, and you get that down, and from a decent range, 400 to 600 meters up to, with an AR-15, chambered in .223 Remington, or if you want the international caliber, it's .556 NATO. But they don't want to use other rifles for that because they have, a decent rate of fire. I won't say a high capacity magazine, generally 30 round magazine. And yeah, generally 30 round magazine, and good stopping power for small to medium game. And it's really good for if there's a lot of these that are there. You don't have to worry about reloading, or by the time, if you have a lever action rifle, say you have 6 coyotes out there, well, they go and they take off running. If you have a lever action rifle, unless you're just an amazing shot, you're probably not going to get all 6 of them. And then, some of those coyotes will live to tell the tale, and you'll be out some sheep. Or, if there's a whole bunch of them, maybe a cow even, and that would be even worse. So, these animals that can cause problems like that, the AR-15 is one of the most used rifles for that. And then in that same platform, the AR-15, also you have the AR-10, which is effectively the same rifle. It's the same platform, the Armalite platform, but it's chambered in .308 or 308 Winchester or 7.62 NATO. Those rifles are very good and very popular for hunting feral hogs in the South. And it's very important to have a weapon with good stopping power, especially like the 308, it was good stopping power, good muzzle velocity, and as a high capacity magazine really as you can take, because that's potentially very dangerous game when you're hunting those animals, hogs, because they can shred you pretty easily. So you want something that you're going to be able to put multiple bullets down range if you need to. Because if you have something that you can only get one shot on target, and then that's it, or if you have 8 hogs out there, and maybe you have something that you can get 6 shots on target, well, you have at least 2 hogs coming at you, depending on how good of a shot you are and your shot placement. So it all depends on what you need. But yeah, those rifles are very popular in hunting. Those are used in hunting a lot. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. And then you mentioned the high capacity magazines. How do you define high capacity magazine? I just want to know, because they have plenty of magazines that are much greater capacity than 30 rounds that you would put in an AR-15. My dad has a handgun. It's not a wimpy gun either. It's a 5.7, shoots the 5.7 millimeter round. It's incredibly high muzzle velocity, does good damage, borderline armor piercing, the way the bullets are. It's a handgun that fires a rifle round, and the standard magazine capacity is 24 rounds. So, or maybe 20 rounds. Either way, it's quite a bit, and it's just in a normal size handgun, no extended magazine or anything. There are extended magazines you can get for a rifle, for a pistol, and you can put, now I think this is overkill, but I've seen people take fully automatic shotguns and put 100 round magazines on them, and that's just that. I think that's overkill in my personal opinion. But that's, but I'm just saying, a 30 round magazine isn't super high capacity, especially when it's the normal size magazine for a particular platform.
And I know I'm going out on a limb and just saying this outright, but I'm 100% in the field that we need to ban assault rifles. And I know that people will say that gun control laws are not the thing that can change this, or at least they'll say that it's not the only thing that can change this. But in my mind, why not do everything in our power to try to protect our kids, or our people, or our fellow countrymen, or our neighbors?
Well, you gave your opinion on that. They should be banned. and you're welcome to that opinion. And yeah, you're allowed to think, you're allowed to hold that opinion if you want to. I won't go down on you for having any opinion. Well, I mean, I guess it depends. If you were of the opinion that, we should just randomly start stoning people for no good reason, or things like that, then I would be down on you for your opinion. But in cases that aren't like that, then yeah, sure, you should definitely believe whatever you like. I do have to agree with the people that you said would disagree with you, in that gun control laws would not help, because if you take weapons, if you take a certain weapon away from the population, because if you take a certain weapon away from the population and you say no one can have these anymore and they're illegal to have because they're so good at killing people, well, now the people who obey the law no longer have weapons that are really good at killing people. And the people who disobey the law still do, because they don't care about the law anyway. Why would they, why would they get rid of them? Good case in point is in Chicago. In Illinois, at least the last time I checked, there was no way to register a handgun in Illinois. Or it's almost very, very hard to register a handgun in Illinois. And you can't, except under the most extreme circumstances, or if you're a police officer or something like that, bondsman, you can't have them with you, especially in Chicago. Well, people who are not law-abiding citizens, gang members and things like that, they tend to still have their handguns and their weapons with them, even though they're illegal to probably own and definitely to carry around with them, but they still do it. And they use them to kill people. And it's the only way to make sure that the bad guys kill people is to remove the ability of the good guys to defend themselves. That's the only way to ensure that the bad guys win.
And in the avenue of trying to attack this from both sides, why don't we stop stigmatizing mental health? Why don't we stop treating it like some sort of problem that people just need to bear alone? That should be the first and foremost of everything, not just in these, but in general, because there's so many people out there suffering silently with mental illnesses that need help and are so afraid to go out and get it because of the way we treat it in this country.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, totally. Yeah, the problem here was not that. Let's go specifically with Nicholas Cruz. The problem was not with the fact that he owned guns. If he had been it kind of was. If he was proven to be mentally ill, then yeah, I can understand you don't let mentally ill people, especially people who might be possibly violent mentally ill people, own firearms. I get that, but no, that's not what you were saying, and that's not what I'm getting at. But yeah, it was a mental health issue. He did have mental health problems, and it seems like most mass shooters have some kind of mental health problem. And yes, if we were able to get these folks the treatment that they need, and if they would be more, more accepting to treatment, and maybe it's our fault that they're not accepting of treatment. I'll allow that. But yeah, the problem is not with the guns themselves. The problem is with the people wielding them. And if we can get these people the help, then if the help is successful, which, you can't know unless you try, but if the help, and that's the only way for them to get help is for us to give them help. So yeah, and if the help is successful, then they won't use their weapons to commit these crimes.
And also, Why do we require more licensing and registration for cars than we do for guns?
It might be different where you are in California, but I highly doubt it because California is horrible in this area. I mean, I'm sure it's fine in a lot of areas, but in this particular area, it's really bad. But here in Indiana, yeah, in order to buy a car, you need... Well, you may not even need to be 18 to buy it. You just need to pay for it. And that's all you need to do. To be licensed to drive a car on public roads, you have to be you have to have taken your driver's test, and by doing so, get your license. Here, in order to carry your gun with you in public, you have to get your license to carry. Which is significantly more expensive than a driver's license. I paid $150 for mine, and my driver's license was $18. Now, Indiana is a shall issue state when it comes to carrying permits. Now, there are two types of states. There are now I think there's a way of carrying a firearm in all 50 states now. So now there are only two types of states: may issue and shall issue. Shall issue means you will receive your permit unless there's a reason why you should not. In a may issue state is you may receive your permit if you have a reason to have it. And so because of that, our permits are, basically you pay for them and you have extensive background checks done, and you and then you pay for it. You have your fingerprints. Now the Department of Homeland Security has your fingerprints, and they have record of all that. And if you have a history of mental illness, if you have a felony conviction, if you have a misdemeanor as a juvenile, and if you have a violent misdemeanor, battery, something like that, battery without entry, I should say, something like that, then you're done. Now, unless it was as a juvenile, you can get a carry permit at 18 years old in Indiana, and you have to wait till you're 23 if you have any juvenile conviction. And that's the way it is. But a lot of states require far more extensive testing with firearms than you do with cars. And like, to get my hunting license, I had to take a hunter's education course, and it was a lot more intense than my driver's test was. So now in Indiana, I don't know if some states require it, but the driver's education course that you take when you're 15 before you get your learner's permit, that is not required here. It's optional and you can do it unless you get your learner's permit sooner, but it's not a requirement, which is good because it was like $300. But anyways. And then to buy a firearm, to buy a car, I don't know of any person who's required to have a federal background check to buy a car. I don't know of any felons who are restricted from buying cars. I don't know of anything. You can have an alcohol-related offense and still buy a car, even though, that's pretty bad for someone who's with drinking problems to be driving, unless they're somehow so responsible that maybe they have a drinking problem, but they would never drive after getting drunk. But if you have, felony convictions, if you have, problems with alcohol, if you have problems with spousal abuse, any of those things, that comes up in your background check, and you cannot purchase a firearm. It is significant. Now, if you're a law-abiding citizen and you didn't do anything stupid as a kid and any of that stuff, and you follow the law, then yes, it's exceedingly easy to buy a gun. It's also very easy to buy a car. So what I'm saying is, it is never more easy to acquire and carry a firearm than it is to acquire and drive a car. If you're a law-abiding citizen, they should both be easy.
I know that people abide very closely by the Second Amendment, and me as a proud American, I'm very proud of our Constitution, but at the same time, there has to be some measure of control. I know that people want to be able to bear arms, and I respect that. I come from a family that was all about that, but that doesn't mean that we can't have some measure of control over these extremely dangerous tools.
Well, there should be. I think it's right that a violent criminal should not be able to have that. I think a mentally ill person who might potentially be violent should not be able to acquire firearms. But that said, that's all the gun control that should be, because the Second Amendment is very clear in its wording, and that is, it says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Which means, well, first, obviously, the right of the people, that's us, to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That means no infringement shall be put upon this right. So you have the right to keep and bear arms, and that's it. Period. You have the right to keep and to bear arms. And the fact that it states a well-regulated militia at the beginning, the militia is a state-run, is a state-run pseudo-military, and it is comprised of every able-bodied man between 17 and 45, 46, something like that. And that's how the militia is defined. And what the militia was there for was to protect the state, the states, back then 13, now 50, or what is it? There's 7, but they couldn't call themselves commonwealths, so 43, but whatever, 50. There's 50 states. The 50 states and the people therein from the rise of an oppressive regime. And so, because of that, these civilians aged 17 to 45, 46, by that definition, need to be able to protect themselves against the federal government should it try to take too much power. And the only way to do that is if these civilians are armed to the same point that the infantry soldiers are. Which means, based on the wording of the Second Amendment and how technology has come today, automatic weapons. Based on the wording of the Second Amendment, civilians should be able to own and carry automatic weapons.
In the end, people will say that I'm spouting ignorance, or that I don't know what I'm talking about, or that I'm saying things that are wrong, and that is fine. But right now, the only thing that I can think of is, why shouldn't we be doing absolutely everything in our power to help? Now is not the time for talk. Now is not the time for empty promises. Now is the time to do something for the people that are suffering most from this.
I'm not saying you're coming from a point of ignorance. You have a few misconceptions about a few things, but you said before you're raised around firearms, you know about firearms. So you have a very noble but misguided cause, I guess. I wouldn't even say that you don't know what you're talking about. It's just, there's some stuff that it seems you may not have considered is all. But, you want to do everything that you can to help those who have been hurt. You just said that you want us to, you want everyone to. Everyone needs to, including me, including you. And I agree with that. But to prevent law-abiding citizens from having weapons is not the answer. To remove freedom is never the answer. It's never a good idea to give the government more power over what we do. That's never a good idea. And yes, if you did take those guns away from us, then sure, anyone who may have legally obtained one and doesn't know how to illegally get one now is no longer able to use those for mass shootings. But the only problem is more mass shootings have taken place with handguns than with, semi-automatic rifles. More people were killed by explosions in mass killings where explosions or other implements were used. More people were killed than ones that use firearms. It's not. The problem is not with the firearms. It never has been.
And I want to end this by saying that these kids that are out demonstrating, they are an inspiration. An absolute inspiration, not just to me, but to everybody watching across the country. And if you're watching this and you are out there demonstrating, or you're organizing marches, or you're talking to the people who are supposedly in power of these decisions, keep it up. Because the world is listening. The country is listening. People will try to ignore you and people will try to dismiss your opinion, but you are the future of this country. And you are the future of the world, and your actions dictate what our future will be. So don't give up the fight. Stay strong.
Yeah, I mean, it is, like I said before, it is good to see kids try to get involved in what's going on. And if these kids show the same, the same vigor and desire to act as they get older, then they could potentially be great leaders and politicians, provided that they see, once they get to the point where they see a tragedy, and instead of letting their emotions get involved in their decision making, if they start thinking with logic and reason, but they retain that same vigor and intensity that they're demonstrating now, then they could be some of the greatest leaders that our country has had. And I agree with you there. But as of right now, they are doing what they're doing is good. How they're doing it is good. Their ideas are a bit misguided, but that's something that hopefully will come with time. And as of now, yeah. And I just want to end by saying, obviously, a ban on weapons is not the answer, and a ban on weapons should not ever be done. And that's strictly because of the way that the supreme law of the land, our Constitution, is set up. It would be wrong to do this. Now, if one wants to, I won't say if you want to, I'll say if one wants to amend the Constitution, make another amendment and say, the Second Amendment does not apply to everyone, or the Second Amendment only applies in these circumstances, or it does not apply to these weapons, or it does that, or it does this, then that's a whole other conversation to have, and that's, we can talk about that. But as of right now, because of the way our law is written, to suggest taking this away, well, the suggestion, obviously is a suggestion, but the act of taking these away would be wrong and unconstitutional. And that's what it really boils down to at the end of the day for me is, do I have the God-given right to own a firearm? Yes and no. Yes, I have the God-given right to life, and that is a great way of protecting that right. But did God say you can own a rifle by the act of you being created? No, he didn't. But as of right now, to take away a right that has been given legally without changing the law is wrong. And it would be wrong anyway, because that's not the government's place, is to tell me, as long as I am not hurting another civilian of my country, then, or obviously if I'm defending myself from someone else, that doesn't count. But as long as I am not actively attacking or hurting or damaging someone else in my, another civilian of my country, if I'm not stealing from them, if I'm not costing them money intentionally, maliciously, if I am not as long as I am not hurting another person, that is the extent to which the government has the right to tell me what to do. And obviously, in this government, our government has overstepped its bounds, and if there is such a ban, then that will be without an amendment to the Constitution. If there is, well, of course, that's even whether or not they amend the Constitution. If there is such a ban, that will be another example of our government overstepping its bounds. But I don't see that happening, fortunately. And with the tax cuts and with a few other things I see possibly on the horizon, it does seem like we will be receiving back some of the freedoms that we have lost over the past several years. And that's a very good thing for me, not just, in my opinion, not just in as far as, weapons are concerned, but in all areas, and that would be just great for me. Well, anyways, that was a very different video for me to do, and I'm sure I tripped over my words a lot because I'm not used to just sitting here and talking, especially when I'm not talking to anyone. But it was different for me. It'll be different for you. Hopefully you guys will all like it, but that's all I got. So I'll see you guys next time around.